I'm Suzette Mahoney, most recently a partner at R2L Restaurant and the president of CCPA. So on behalf of CCPA, I would like to extend our heartfelt wishes that everyone is healthy and that you have the support you need as we begin the holiday season and head into winter. And hopefully we all survive this snowy winter storm that's coming. Hopefully everyone also shares in the excitement of the rollout of the vaccine and can enjoy the holidays knowing there is reason to be optimistic about 2021. In the coming year, we plan to continue our great programming and we'd like to hear from you. We welcome all suggestions for speakers or events. Please put your ideas in the chat feature throughout our program. So let's review a few details about today's event. We are recording this so we can share it afterwards. We will mute everyone to maintain audio and visual controls. There is a link to today's program in the chat. You can also use the chat to ask questions, comment, make suggestions, and connect with each other. And if you need to take care of business, feel free to turn off your video. CCPA is an intimate and diverse group of business owners, executives, and managers looking to build relationships and offer each other meaningful resources. We will continue to bring you unparalleled access to speakers, decision makers, and leaders who are shaping Center City. We will also continue to keep our members and guests informed about business challenges and opportunities in Philadelphia and help them become Center City smart. To touch on a few of our upcoming programs, which will all be virtual, we will kick off the new season of Lunch with City Leaders with Leslie Richards, the General Manager of SEPTA, on January 6th. And in March, we have the new Commerce Director, Michael Rashid. You can find a full schedule of our events on centercityproprietors.org. I'd like to acknowledge CCPA's sustaining sponsor and our preferred benefits provider who said hello a few minutes ago, Michael Craig of Penworth Financial Services. And our pre-event music has been provided with the kind permission of the Philadelphia Orchestra Association. Lunch with City Leaders is made possible by Citizens Bank and our sponsors, the Community College of Philadelphia, Friedman LLP, KYW News Radio, Lev Lane, Post Brothers, and Visit Philadelphia. And now I'd like to welcome Dan Fitzpatrick, the president of Citizens Bank Mid-Atlantic Region, to say a few words.
Suzette, hey, Suzette, thanks so much. You can hear me okay?
Yes.
All right, great. Well, thank you, Suzette, and all the other sponsors too for continuing this important series. On behalf of Citizens Bank, we are very proud to continue to support this speakers series. It's so critical that we remain engaged together during this crisis period. It's particularly difficult on many of the members of our Center City District and the Center City Proprietors Organization, but it's really important on behalf, Citizens Bank, obviously, we're the 11th largest bank in the country, but Philadelphia is one of our core markets. So we feel like we're continuing to invest in new branches in Center City, Philadelphia. So we believe in Philadelphia in a big way, both in the low to moderate income census tracts, as well as Center City. One interesting fact is we continue to grow and evolve and become a very strong M&A advisor and boutique investment bank. Is we actually launched a national digital bank about 3 years ago now that's been very successful, called Citizens Access. Pre-COVID, obviously, in these times where we all go much more virtual, it's paying dividends. But what we do miss is getting together, and that's what we're committed to, still these people relationships, which is what we think distinguishes Citizens Bank. So thank you for all you do in Philadelphia, in the center of town, which is the heartbeat of our city. So obviously, Philadelphia, I'm a native Philadelphian. Philadelphia is the cradle of liberty. We're proud of that. And you think about how important our historic district is to Philadelphia, to the Center City Proprietors Association. And we're fortunate to have our mall anchored by the Independence Hall, right, where it all started, and across our mall to the beautiful National Constitution Center. It really is a great, brings national tourism and really puts us not just at the center of the country, but at the center of the world on key events. So Citizens Bank is really fortunate to have a long partnership relationship with the National Constitution Center. We've always had a senior level board relationship, as well as being a presenting sponsor of the Liberty Medal that has brought so many distinguished global leaders to Philadelphia to celebrate liberty and justice. And there was a special one this past year that Jeff led. So we are really fortunate today to have a person I consider a friend in Jeffrey Rosen, the president and CEO of the National Constitution Center, as our speaker at lunch today. Jeff is as distinguished a legal scholar as we have in this country, particularly around the Constitution and the Supreme Court. But again, leading the National Constitution Center is so critical on civic education, that is so critical in this time, right? This past year, this election year, has shown us how important civic education is to all of us. So again, Jeff's biography is in the program, but Jeff is also a professor of law at George Washington University Law School, contributing editor of The Atlantic. He's a graduate of Harvard College, Oxford University, and Yale Law School. He's also the author of seven books, including biographies of Louis Brandeis and William Howard Taft. His most recent book that everyone should get is Conversations with RBG, Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg, on life, love, liberty, and the law. Again, Jeff is a remarkable leader, and we're so fortunate to have his leadership in Philadelphia, but also he had a particularly special relationship with Ruth Bader Ginsburg. And fortunately, this year's Liberty Medal was fortunately just in the nick of time, but that special relationship is something Jeff, I'm sure, will comment on around weddings and stuff. So it is my distinct privilege to introduce Jeffrey Rosen, CEO of our National Constitution Center. Thanks, Jeff.
Thank you so much, Dan. Hi, friends. So glad to be with all of you today. Dan, the Constitution Center's relationship with you and Citizens Bank has been so meaningful, and this was indeed a Liberty Medal to remember. The video honoring Justice Ginsburg aired the night before her passing, and she had selected her favorite opera singers to sing her favorite songs, and we put the video together with our friends at Comcast, and an all-woman team of brilliant writers and producers volunteered to create the video. Check it out if you haven't seen it yet. It's on the Constitution Center website and free and online. It's the most moving tribute to an American hero imaginable. So I'm really looking forward to talking to you today. I want to give you an update on the Constitution Center's remarkable digital experience post-COVID. Share with you the online resources we've created for kids in Philadelphia and around the country, get your ideas about how to bring these to even more kids in the Philadelphia schools, and then really think through with you in a brainstorming way what the future of the physical space, the National Constitution Center and other Philadelphia museums looks like, not only in the immediate post-COVID period as we begin to open up again, but in the years leading up to 2026, because that's the 250th anniversary of the Declaration. It's coming up. We're beginning to think strategically about how to make Philadelphia the centerpiece of those celebrations, with a focus on the meaning of the Declaration and the Constitution. And it'd be great to just have a discussion about it. Okay, so here's what happened online. A week after COVID hit, my colleague Curry Sautner and I decided to start teaching live classes on the Constitution to middle and high school students. And it was a kind of let's put on a show in a garage feeling. We just powered up our Zooms, and I did my law professor thing, and we said, hey, we can do this for high school kids, but we're confident someone will tune in. We got 100,000 students who signed up between the time we launched in March and now, because it's now become a permanent feature of what we're doing. And as a result of hits to the National Constitution Center's Interactive Constitution, which is the online platform that we host all of our stuff from, the NCC is now the third most visited museum website in America. It's absolutely remarkable. And there was a great piece in the Philadelphia Inquirer recently by Stephen Salisbury, which I'm sharing now. Can he actually do that? Philadelphia's Constitution Center is now the answer authority for a nation in government stress. And Stefan just noted the web stats, which I've shared, that we're the third most visited museum website in America, behind only the Met and the Museum of Modern Art. That was a line that many of us use: bad for the country, good for constitutional debate. But it was just an incredible time for people to tune in online. And this traffic was driven both by the online programs for adults that we sponsored, including this one that Stefan is calling out about what we learned from the past 4 years with some really wonderful scholars. It notes the Liberty Medal ceremony for Justice Ginsburg, and then it notes the interactive Constitution. So I want to show this to you now because it's such an incredible platform, and I want to share it with you as parents. If your kids are learning at home, I want them to know about it. As fellow citizens, because we all learn from it, and then to brainstorm with you about how we can really get this adopted in Philly schools. So I've just clicked on the I'm going to click on the interactive Constitution. Do you see interactive Constitution before you on the screen share? Okay, so the link is working. All right, so this platform launched in 2015 and has now gotten more than 40 million hits since we launched. I mean, it's just really extraordinary. And when you Google the Constitution, the interactive Constitution comes up first for the First Amendment and Fourth Amendment, just because it's such a trusted resource with such astonishing features. So what do we got on the interactive Constitution? We can pick any of the 80 clauses of the Constitution. Of course, there's been much in the news recently, the Electoral College, the voting rights provisions, but let's pick something obvious like the First Amendment. So if we pick the religious liberty provisions of the First Amendment, we begin with essays by the leading liberal and conservative scholars in America, nominated by the Conservative Federalist Society and the Progressive American Constitution Society, with 1,000 words about what they agree the provision means, and then separate statements up top about what they disagree about. So legal geeks will know that Michael McConnell just argued the religious liberty case before the Supreme Court that they heard a few weeks ago, and Fred Geddix is equally distinguished on the other side. The 1,000-word statement is like a unanimous Supreme Court opinion. Every word in it is agreed to by both sides, so you can teach it to any student. Any teacher can teach it completely confident in its nonpartisan credibility. And it's an amazing history of the essential meaning of the Free Exercise Clause, including its history. And then up top, you have matters for debate, where Michael McConnell says that religious institutions should get exemptions from general laws, like the baker shouldn't have to bake a cake for the gay couple. And Fred Geddix disagrees and says that generally people should have to abide by generally applicable laws. So this is just incredibly rich. And our current board chair is Justice Neil Gorsuch. Our previous one was President-elect Biden. Both of them said we got to get this to every student in America. And Chief Justice Roberts gave this a shout out in his annual report on the federal judiciary as a model for civics teaching. But that's not all. I always feel like a Ginsu knife salesman when I'm going through the interactive Constitution. That's just the beginning. So what else do we got on this great tool? You can look at early drafts of every provision of the Constitution. And as we think about 2026 and the history, it's really relevant to go to the Revolutionary era state constitutions. Here's the Pennsylvania Constitution from 1776. All men, of course it's men, have a natural and unalienable right to worship Almighty God according to the dictates of their own conscience of understanding. And that's why you can't be compelled to attend religious worship or deprived of your civil rights as citizens, because the rights of conscience are unalienable. They come from God or nature, not from government. I can't alienate to Dan the power to control my thoughts because I can't control them myself. They're the product of my reason. And as creatures of reason, we're all, it's a right we can't surrender to anyone else. So really wonderful historical analysis of the clauses in question. Then we get to the core of all of the amazing content that the Constitution Center is producing every week and every day. So the media library pegs all of our content to the provision in question. So when I click on this, I'm going to get the podcast, videos, classes, and programs related to religious liberty. So the podcasts are now getting about 100,000 listeners a week. I call up a top liberal and conservative scholar, and we debate the constitutional issues in the news. So the recent relevant one, the religious restrictions and COVID. This court just issued a decision on this last week. Can Governor Cuomo in New York close the churches? We had two amazing scholars debating the merits of that decision. Church-state separation on the Constitution. Erwin Chemerinsky, the dean of Berkeley Law School, debating conservative scholars about issues like the baking the cake and so forth. And the thing I have to share with you, these discussions are so civil. They're very deep. They don't shy away from disagreements, but because we talk only about constitutional issues, not policy or political issues, people are never yelling at each other. They're always disagreeing respectfully. And it really has, in this mad time for the country in terms of politics, increased my optimism about the possibility for civil dialogue as long as we can focus on respectful agreement and disagreement about the Constitution. The past 4 years, that was that great thing that Stefan called out with Ann Applebaum and Yasha Monk. Those are the podcasts. Then the videos, similar kinds of things, including programs on social media platforms, and the election, which included people from the new Facebook Free Speech Advisory Board, press freedoms during turbulent times. Congresswoman Mary Jo Scanlon has become a great friend of the center, and she appeared on that panel along with some of her colleagues and some journalists, and it was a great discussion of that important topic. And then the blogs are kind of, this happened on this day, and they're historic and they're current, and they really travel widely because people trust them. They come up top of Google search. And then the classes, and this is what I mentioned Curry and I have started teaching. So they include a Q&A with Justice Gorsuch. This one got 14,000 students live on Constitution Day. It was thrilling to see that many kids tune in. And he's become such a booster for the center and will help us spread the word in whatever way we can. And then here are the classes themselves. We did the Bill of Rights this week. The week before was the powers of Congress. I'll throw out a hypo to the kids like, imagine Congress tomorrow passes a national mask mandate. Can they do that? And you just have a very substantive debate about the balance between Congress's power under the Commerce Clause and the necessary and proper clause versus the reserved rights of citizens to worship or to speak or to assemble. And it's really elevating. I have to share, they're very intimate classes. You feel like you get to know the students. There's one student who's in California, as it happens, whose questions were so good and so pointed that my colleagues and I reached out to him and offered to write him a college recommendation because he's running circles around all of us, and just getting to know people from around the country who are choosing to access this free material is great. We must get this material, I'm going to stop screen sharing now, to underserved students. And we've talked to Dr. Height in the school district. He's very supportive of the project, but actually getting teachers to adopt it is tough. And it has to be a school by school or teacher by teacher initiative. We're working with Penn to teach a class next year live and also work with their Netter Center to be liaisons with the schools, both the public schools and the charter schools, and to sign up individual teachers to join our teacher advisory board. We can offer a modest honorarium to the teachers, and in exchange, they sign up their classes and take our professional development opportunities, and hopefully we'll be able to spread the word. So I'm just putting a marker in the fact that I would like Philadelphia, of course, to be a shining model for all of our educational efforts as we push out these classes. Our goal is to reach 1 million kids in 3 years, but the sky's the limit. We just got a substantial grant from a social media platform that wants to bring them to Los Angeles schools, and we can try to do that. But I want to really, all of us have a duty, I'll say, as civic leaders in Philadelphia, to really make our Philadelphia schools public, parochial, private, and charter models for the rest of the country. And if you have any ideas about how to distribute this free material to any school, reach out to me or Curry Sodner, and would love to talk because I think it's necessary. All right, so that is, now I'm seeing, I've been channeling here, I'm seeing the chat response. Sue says, this is so cool, great snow day reading. It really is. You can just learn so much from it. You know, I'm a law professor, I live and breathe this stuff. There are 80 clauses. Just pick someone you don't know about. You'll learn something new. There's so much to learn, and it's so exciting. And it's just, you can engage with it at any level, from middle school all the way up to Supreme Court justices. And look at this in the chat. This is so great. You guys are already having a debate about the 12th Amendment in the Facebook discussion. It did come up. And I have, Carol, I did see the What the Constitution Means to Me show. And we did talk about the possibilities of partnership. We'll see what happens there once the things open up again. And thank you for sending the link to your 16-year-old. And thank you for trying to persuade your kids to watch as they're learning at home. I know it's tough because there's so much material, but it's just amazing stuff. So we can keep, I'll stop in a second. We can have our conversation about the material I've just shared, or this second big question that my colleagues and I are just beginning to turn our attention to now that we face the prospect of opening up again. How to make Philly the center of the 2026 celebrations, and how to use the amazing building on the fake backdrop behind me that I live in front of, so that it is the convening space for people around the country for the next 5 years to come to Philadelphia to debate and discuss civic issues. The sky's the limit. We can invite members of Congress to convene before sessions. We can invite the Supreme Court to hold special sessions. We could have religious leaders of all denominations talking about what they agree and disagree about questions involving religious liberty. High school, heads of debate team or student body presidents, foundation heads on major holidays. There's no limit to what we can do except for funds, and the funds will be there. I've really found that if you have a great idea that resonates and is on mission, people will support it. So I'm optimistic about the ability to raise whatever money we need to support any vision that makes sense. And I'm also happy to report to you, my fellow business leaders, colleagues in the business community, the Constitution Center, despite the loss in revenue that came from having to close the building, is in good financial shape. We were able, with cost reductions and very modest furloughing, I'm pleased to say, although it was tough, it was not. We were not forced to do much because, unlike some of our peer institutions, we're not very admissions dependent. Most of our revenue has always come from philanthropy, so we're able to sustain the staff, continue to produce the content. The philanthropy was so generous, and a very much valued PPP loan from the government, with the help of our friends at Citizens, also helped bring us over the really tough period. So we ended the year in a decent place. So I'm optimistic about the finances. What we need is the vision. What do we want to achieve? It was extraordinarily meaningful to all of us at the center that both President Trump and President-elect Biden held their town halls with undecided voters with ABC News at the National Constitution Center within weeks of each other, attesting to our, multi-partisan, bipartisan, nonpartisan credibility. The Secretary of State, Mike Pompeo, held a big religious liberty event over the summer, and Vice President Biden came several times during the campaign to make important speeches about the Constitution. So the place and the city and the space, Independence Mall and the center, have iconic significance, as Dan Fitzpatrick said so well in his introduction. How can we really use that in the years leading up to 2026? As a convening space, and I want us to be America's convener for discussions of a civic nature, and also to continue to bring in those great school kids, because once we open up again, we found that the real audience for this phenomenal content are learners of all ages, but in particular school groups. And we have grants to bring in school groups from the Philadelphia School District. We can bring them in from the entire region. And how can we integrate all of this amazing digital content, which I just showed you, so that you can go to this physical space of the center, see our exhibits, including, we opened just during the COVID shutdown, this unbelievably inspiring new exhibit about the 19th Amendment and how women won the vote. And that is right next to our new exhibit, which opened last year, on the Civil War and Reconstruction, the battle for freedom and equality. The only two exhibits in America constitutionally themed about the fight for African-American equality and women's equality, all in one beautiful gallery on the floor of the Constitution Center. We want to invest in the core exhibit so that by 2026, it tells the story of the relationship between the Declaration and the Constitution with shining inspirational clarity, all using artifacts as well as digital technology. So there we go. You can tell I'm really pumped up about the next 5 years. I think the opportunities are limitless. The sky's the limit. It's just a question of our vision and imagination, and we will be able to support it. And I'm now so eager to look forward to talking to you about how we can work together to make Philadelphia a centerpiece of discussions about the Constitution over the next 5 years. Thanks so much. And I'll just jump in and say, either jump in using your Zoom, or you can chat questions too. It's a flexible technology, whatever you're more comfortable with. But let's have a real conversation and brainstorming session.
Paul Stanky is ready to go.
Wow, I'm first. Okay, well, thank you. And Jeff, great presentation, really inspiring. I remember when the Constitution Center was being planned and people said, how are they possibly going to make such a document exciting for the public? But you have, and your track record proves it. In answer to your question, how to make Philadelphia the center in 2026, it occurs to me that during the presidential campaign, I was really impressed with how many times the candidates came to the Constitution Center for public events. I think President Trump was there at least once. President-elect Biden was there more than once, I believe. And so it seems to me that your very institution is maybe our biggest ace in the hole for 2026 in terms of the degree to which you've already established a national profile for hosting events of national importance. And I wonder, what your reaction is to that and how you're thinking you might be able to leverage that to help Philadelphia's case for being the center of the semi-quincentennial celebration.
Well, first of all, nice. Congrats for getting the Latin right. I think that's exactly what
I wasn't even raised Catholic and never took Latin, but I do my best.
Nicely done. Semi-quincentennial. Yes, exactly. We were very lucky during the campaign. Just as you said, President Trump came once and Vice President Biden was there several more times. Those events came with the town halls were sponsored by ABC News. So sometimes the events come through the networks who host events, which is generally the case during the campaign. The event with Secretary Pompeo was the State Department reaching out. I do have to share with you, we took a lot of heat when Pompeo came from people who don't like Pompeo. And then when Biden came, the same thing. Basically, we have a open public forum principle that says that the Constitution Center is a national treasure and our space is open to any public figure who wants to pay the very nominal rental fee. It's a couple $100, so we're not making, people have to cover costs, but we don't make a profit on this. It's not always easy because if you got a controversial person, then half of the country's going to be not happy, but we'll keep doing that because that's our role. What could we do proactively in addition to just saying we're open to all comers? I don't have the answer to the model for this, but I would love to create a series of significant convenings in the years leading up to 2026. So say, I was just brainstorming with a foundation head this morning who has deep Philadelphia roots. And he said, why not bring America's religious leaders one year and the Supreme Court the next and Congress the next? That would be one way of doing it. We'd have to get that funded, but I think that certainly we could get national funding for that and build up interest that way. That's just one thought. As with all celebrations, there's lots of, the turf wars have already begun, and there was a tussle between whether the commission that's planning the 2026 events would be based in Philly or DC, and I think DC won out, but so my instinct is let's not worry about structures and procedures. Let's just start doing it. If we just sketch out a vision of what events we think would be meaningful, we can start holding them and the momentum will build. So I'll just throw that back to you, just as as an opening thought. How about that? A series of 1 or 2 or 3 major events over each year over the next 5 years to build interest and then build it out from there. What do you think?
I like the sound of that. And I think Sam Katz has been doing some of that already over the past few years, but I do like the sound of that.
That'd be great.
Hey, Jeff, it's Dan Fitzpatrick. If you don't mind me jumping in on that, because it is so, I mean, the semi-quincentennial is so important. And obviously a lot of the leadership is our local chairs, Dan DeLell locally. Do you think a Biden presidency, obviously as close as the president-elect is, as a former board chair of the Constitution Center, could change those dynamics? Obviously, we know what President Trump said about Philadelphia versus the law. Joe Biden, having been our 3rd senator from Pennsylvania for all these years, to quote him, could be more helpful in changing that dynamic of that, where Philly feels like in that sort of federal debate that has to occur, because obviously we're going to need some congressional funding for this as well, right?
Yeah, absolutely, Dan. Yes, you're right. The President-elect Biden has huge affection for Philly in particular, PA in general. He loves the NCC and said nice things during the campaign. He's really devoted to Penn and the Penn Biden Center. He's, it's right around the corner from Wilmington. So we got some indications from his team that they'll consider the NCC a kind of northern White House when he's making, public statements when he's in the region and area. So if there's a particular ask where the White House can be helpful, I'm sure they'd be open to it. And Chris Coons, who's close to Biden, has just introduced a big civics bill with some R's. So the short answer is, I think if there's a concrete ask, then we could bring it to the right people and try to get some DC support.
Yeah, that's great. It's great.
We have a question from Carol about how you translate the virtual participation that you're seeing to physical visits once allowed.
It's a great question. I don't think we're aspiring to do that. They're different. We think of our mission now as an educational mission. So we're trying to educate people wherever they are and bring them the material wherever they're learning. And that could be at home when we're learning remotely. It could be in classrooms across the country when we are open up again, and we also are using Zoom technology to allow classrooms in Philadelphia to speak to classrooms in California and have debates about constitutional issues. But then your question, Carol, is, but what about bringing people to the building? And I think it's just before COVID shut down, we got some phenomenal grants to have free buses for kids in the school district in Philadelphia and in the tri-state region to come to the Constitution Center for an immersive day-long experience that we call the Constitutional Ambassadors Program. And we'll start that up again. And after many years of looking at the admissions question, our conclusion was the center's core audience are school kids, and the visits need to be primarily philanthropically funded. The hope of people walking off the mall and coming in such numbers that they'll produce meaningful revenue just never panned out from the time the NCC started, and I don't think that that's our ambition. So that's our goal, will be to fill the building with learners of all ages, but especially school kids, and to primarily do it philanthropically, and then for other uses of the building to serve as this kind of convening space for major events of the kind that we're talking about. It's a liberating thing to be able to say this to you, because our business model will be in good shape, even if walk-in admissions don't return to anything close to their pre-COVID levels, which we hope they will. We'll still be in good shape, because that's not the major source of our revenue, and that makes it all the more of a great opportunity to be able to offer our phenomenal material free for kids with philanthropic support.
Great. Sarah, if you can unmute and then.
Yeah, so Jeffrey, I I am homegrown. I'm a Philadelphia resident my whole entire life. 2 years ago, I moved to 4th and Walnut. And I have to share with you that I have never experienced such, I am out walking every day. This neighborhood, what is in this neighborhood, the Constitution Center, Independence Place, it just, every day, it just fills my heart. I feel that having events is a great way of getting people to come into the area if they have not already. I'm so hopeful and excited about what's the possibilities are. And as I said, I see the tourists pre-COVID and, you know, the horses, all the tourists, and to see what's happened over the past 10 months just breaks my heart. But I am very hopeful because I can see it picking up again with the people, the horse and carriages. But I do feel that what you're doing with the virtual, with having the kids learn about this, and then getting them excited to come visit. I don't know if you saw where Condé Nast listed Philadelphia as one of the top places to visit in 2021. Did you happen to see that article?
I did not.
Okay, so Condé Nast has Philadelphia as one of the top places to visit in 2021. So I feel if you're on the mindset that you want to hold some events at the Constitution Center, I feel that would be just a fabulous way of getting people into the neighborhood and experience, because this neighborhood is an experience. It's a feeling that you get when you walk into that Constitution Center, when you stand in front of the, you know, such historic buildings where things took place. So like I said, it's 2 years I'm living at Fort. I've lived here my whole life, but moving here at 4th and Walnut 2 years ago changed my whole mindset on the city and what's going on.
That's great. 4th and Walnut is such an awesome neighborhood. And I am on 21st and Walnut, and I walk down Walnut every day. And I hope it'll open up again. That's great about the travel magazine, and we have a huge opportunity here. I haven't given him warning, but my colleague Vince Stango is on, and Vince is used to my calling on him without warning. But I wanted him to say hi and also share with the group our plans for reopening and kind of the ways that we're thinking about really making the NCC a center of Philly tourism as 2026 approaches.
Sure, happy to jump on. Hi, everyone. It's good to be here. And I was going to say, when you work with and for a constitutional law professor, you know that you can get called on at any time, and you must be prepared to just be on. So I'll do my best. This has been such a challenging time for everybody. Constitution Center is no different. And while Jeff has painted such a great picture of where we are, there was a lot of hard work that went into that. His leadership, the team, around us, and being able to pivot from, being predominantly, physical events, physical activities, et cetera, to a fully virtual world was something that we had started prior to COVID. And so we were ready to go when things shut down and just pivot pretty seamlessly into the world that Jeff described over the course of his talk. We don't see that going away anytime soon. We, as he said, we look forward to welcoming people back in the numbers that were coming before. We were fortunate enough to be reopened from the beginning of August to just a few weeks ago when the city shut museums and other institutions down. And we look forward to reopening after the first of the year. But in many ways, it was a bit of a freeing exercise because there were things that we were afraid to try in the past. As Jeff mentioned, we never relied financially on admissions and the gate as much as we projected to when we were building the Constitution Center. I can say that with confidence because I was around when we were planning it, building it, and I'm here 20 years later. So it was, that was a bit of a disappointment. And so there's things that we can do now that we're not as fearful of, the revenue repercussions of closing a day, or putting more of our resources into virtual online activities. So it's been a learning experience. We're learning every day. New things about how we can operate, how we can still be an anchor of the community. Like Sarah mentioned, we can be that place, as part of the historic district for people to come and have a great in-person experience. But we're also the place where that family from Utah or Kentucky or places around the world that are never going to come to Philadelphia, where they can experience the richness of the content and the story of the Constitution and the Constitution Center. And so, I think as a lead up to 2026, we can lean on the anchors of the city, these great places that have been a part of our nation's history since its founding, but also tell stories that are very relevant today. And that's the beauty of the Constitution Center. We can give the history of the country. We can give the history of the Constitution, but we can, as Jeff mentioned, there's just a host of issues every day that are in the news and are relevant to citizens all over the country. Not only historical lessons, but everyday life. And so, I think if we can kind of combine those two, we'll be well positioned going to 2026. And the idea of investing in the Constitution Center in a way that continues to improve on the physical space and allows us to be a better broadcast center for education, whether it be for students and teachers, for lifelong learners who want to come to a town hall debate, or in partnership with news outlets like ABC News or any other media outlet that wants to bring candidates or other luminaries to the NCC for meaningful discussion. We'll be well positioned to do that. So I share Jeff's optimism, and I'm the one that gets to make all of Jeff's dreams a reality. So we'll be working hard over the next 5 or 6 years to figure out how to do that, and look forward to your thoughts on how we can do that. Even after the event today, we'd love to hear from you if you'd have thoughts you'd like to share. So Jeff, I don't know how that was for an impromptu riff, but there you go.
That was beautiful. And I didn't even give you a heads up. You do indeed make our mutual dreams a reality. And we have 2 questions in the chat that I'm going to throw back to you, because that's what I get to do. And you always can answer them better than I can. Dan asks, Jeff and Vince, what's the mix between tourist visitors versus local regional visitors? Obviously, many of the locals being students.
Yeah. And so prior to COVID, it was a heavy school group audience for us, with the tourists being more of a June, July, August, kind of group. When we reopened in August for some time, we saw, at least up until Labor Day, it was very heavy tourism. We had people coming from all over the country. We were kind of surprised by that, we imagine that when as things kind of get back to normal, and hopefully the 2021-22 school year, we'll start to see the students back there. But it's a pretty heavy, I think it's 70 to 75% local, with 25% or so out of town tourists, heavily in the summer months.
That is great. And Maureen McVale says, I'm a creative type and envision debate teams having competitions and exhibiting civil discourse. After school activities programs are great partner. Maureen, it would be so wonderful to have kids come after school and have debates. And there's a national We the People competition that has local chapters, but I'll just throw this back to Vince because you remember the history. Did the Constitution Center at some point have after school activities or Constitution camps, and could we think about resurrecting them?
We absolutely did summer camps, and we've had limited success with after school programs. But I think it's another, sometimes it's just the right time, right program. So it's certainly something worth, well worth revisiting and figuring out ways if we can't get into the classrooms, can we bring some of the students to us to engage? And we could do that physically with the types of debates that Maureen described, or we can do that virtually with as an extension of our classroom exchanges, where students come together from around the country to learn about and debate constitutional issues. So I think there's definitely opportunities there that we could we can continue to explore.
Can I just quickly add on that I've managed events all over the city of Philadelphia and elsewhere, and the National Constitution Center is my personal favorite, with an outstanding staff and unbelievable facilities. So just had to put the pitch.
Thank you. You may indeed add that on, and we're very grateful. Thank you very much for those.
Yeah, I was going to jump in because in past years we do, obviously as a bank, and there's a few other bankers on the line, we do a lot around financial literacy, and we do direct some of that to elementary school students. What we were doing is we were blending it into a civics day where we were sponsoring to have the students come into the Constitution Center, where they have the Constitution Center civic education experience, and we'd blend in, a age appropriate, 35, 40-minute financial literacy education. I think that's something, Vince, I'll check to see if we can revisit that, because again, anything we can do, at 3:00 today, I'm on the mayor's nominating committee for the new board. We need 3 additional Board of Education members. And, again, it's how do we provide that enrichment to the school district, which is obviously financially challenged, and getting young people out of the neighborhood into incredible resources like the National Constitution Center is critical for us. So something we should all challenge ourselves to do, how we can be helpful on that front.
Dan, that's a great opportunity, and we call it our Young Citizens Program, and it's one of the anchors of our year, being able to bring kids physically to the center to get education about financial literacy. And why not? If you're talking to the mayor's board, I'm not sure that it would be all that. I'm just making this up, and maybe Vince will tell me it's not right, but just if we could get the kids to the NCC on buses, we have the resources, and just with a few staff members could give them some really enriching constitutional education. So let's think about doing that once COVID opens up again. That'd be great.
Yeah, no, absolutely. The limited success that we did have was these kind of one-off days throughout the year, like Dan, like you described, and not a sustainable, kind of program throughout the year. And, I think the Constitutional Ambassadors Program, Jeff, is kind of the daytime version of what we're talking about here. And this would just be an extension of that, kind of after school element, which we had not incorporated in prior to COVID. So I don't see why we couldn't do that with the structure that we already have in place.
I have a question for Jeff.
Yes, sir.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can.
Kind of taking it off the fact of the center, but more on the Constitution. So if the Constitution was a person, what would the Constitution be saying about the events post-election?
I love the question. And even I will not presume to speak for the Constitution incarnate, but we had the Constitution addressing just that question with the debate we had about what have we learned from the past 4 years. And David, what we found, there generally are good arguments on all sides of most important constitutional debates. So it's really important generally to have people of different perspectives addressing your question, rather than having one person presumed to speak for the Constitution. So for that, what have we learned from the past 4 years debate? It was Yasha Monk and Ann Applebaum from the Agora Institute, very distinguished scholars who believe that we've come close to lapsing into authoritarianism over the past 4 years, debating David French, who is a very well-known anti-Trump conservative writer, and Charles Kessler, who's a very well-known pro-Trump conservative writer. And they debated that question, and they went back and forth about whether the norms were tested, but the institutions held, or the norms broke, or whether things could have gone another way. The point is that I cannot sum up in a soundbite this unbelievably rich hour-long discussion about what we learned. So all this is to say, I'd love to dig in with you about any number of questions that your question raises, including what about the refusal of the president to concede? Is this an example of the court system and the election officials effectively working and showing, as that opinion by Judge Bibas, a former University of Penn law professor on the Third Circuit, did in rejecting the president's claims unequivocally? Is this a shining example of our nonpartisan judiciary coming through? Or is it troubling that it took 6 weeks for the Senate Majority Leader to recognize the president-elect's victory? That is worth debating too, and we just debated that question on the podcast that's going to publish tomorrow. So all this is to say is that there are an infinite variety of answers to your questions, but I would refer, I just would plug the podcast, the videos, the programs that unite people who disagree to debate them. I will say the fact that I can't answer you quickly means that it's hard for us to produce content that is short and pithy. And of course, there's a lot of pressure to do that because that stuff gets much bigger audiences than the longer, wonkier stuff. But I don't think you can really have a thoughtful answer to a tough constitutional question in a soundbite. Well, there are very few questions that the Constitution answers clearly. How old does the president have to be? 35. I can say that. But what have we learned from the past 4 years? That's going to have to be debated. So part of this is an act of faith that citizens will take the time to listen to arguments on both sides, to separate their political from their constitutional views, and to have civil dialogue. How we reach broader audiences is a strategic question that we're exploring together. Whether clipping our existing content and distributing it on new platforms makes sense, working with mass platforms like Facebook or Snapchat to try to create pithy content or not is a tough question that we're continuing to debate.
I would just say that there's an opportunity for now for the center and the Constitution to speak out and have a point of view in the broadest possible way, because that is at the heart of who we are and what we are, and that has been under some sort of a test. So if there's any moment in time for the Constitution Center and the Constitution Center and the Constitution to say whatever, whether it's the faith or whatever that is, this is the moment in time to step up and really be heard. And that is a contribution to the brainstorming, I guess, which is this is your moment in time, because everyone has been saying Constitution, Constitution, Constitution for the last month.
That is a very helpful intervention. This is our moment in time, and we have seized it. And that is why our web traffic is so strong, and that's why all sides trust us to be a platform for meaningful debate. When there is a clear answer to a constitutional question, I can state it as a law professor. So for example, when Chief Justice Roberts defended the independence of the judiciary against threats from the president about Obama and Trump judges, I was able to write an Atlantic piece that praised the Chief Justice for his defense of judicial independence. And similarly, when the court rules unanimously or by lopsided majorities on questions involving free speech or the Fourth Amendment and so forth, we can say so. But only in a descriptive role. My job and the Constitution Center's job is not to put our thumb on the scales of questions that are significantly debated. In that case, we're a hosting platform, but to defend the institutions and to express consensus. So it's a delicate line, and of course, there's pressure all the time. Every week, someone wants us to weigh in on their side. To take one example, because what you're pressing is really interesting. When George Floyd was murdered, there were a lot of institutions that were just issuing statements deploring the terrible conduct as well as expressing their commitment to anti-racism. We thought that our job was not to issue statements, but to host meaningful debates. And we had the most searingly deep discussion with Chief Judge Ted McKee of the Third Circuit, with Charles Ramsey, the former police chief of Philadelphia and DC, and with scholars of all perspectives, conservative and liberal, and diverse and of all backgrounds, about issues like qualified immunity for the police, about police reform, about community policing. It was substantive, it was meaningful, and I think that was our distinctive contribution. So that's what we're gonna keep doing. It's made us incredibly relevant. It's made us trusted, and that's what we're gonna keep doing.
One
We have
last
time
thought.
for a couple.
Send a Valentine. Send a Valentine to America and say something about the Constitution. Send something out. Send
Well,
something out on
once again,
Valentine's Day.
we send stuff out every week, and I've got to refer you to both to the podcasts and to the town hall programs, which be one of those 100,000 listeners who are learning about the Constitution, as well as, we have an amazing site with the Atlantic magazine called The Battle for the Constitution, and we co-host this site. And I just wrote a piece for it about, oh my gosh, I buried the lead. You want the Valentine for the Constitution that we just sent out? So we hosted 3 teams, conservative, progressive, and libertarian, to draft constitutions from scratch. This was supported by our friend Jeff Yass. He said, wouldn't it be great to see what Americans agree and disagree about the Constitution? I just wrote up the results for the Atlantic. It blew our minds that the conservative and progressive teams agreed on the need for electoral college reform. They both wanted popular election of the president with ranked choice voting. They agreed on the need for 18-year terms for Supreme Court justices, and they agreed on the need to limit executive power with congressional oversight. So we pushed that out on the Atlantic platform. We published the constitutions. I talked about it on the Smirkana show, and people were really struck by how I think that was a Valentine to America, because it reminded all of us that in all of this partisan disagreement, there's much more there's more agreement about these fundamental principles than people would have thought. So check it out. It's really great.
We have time for just 1 or 2 more questions, and Marty wanted to go next.
Marty Tussman
There you go.
Tussman from Jenkintown Building Services, and very much appreciative of the center since before it was built, and involved in it then. I'm much along the line of Dave's conversation. I was a young man in the 60s, 1860s, I think. And I had to go down to the South to witness colored bathrooms and colored water fountains, got in trouble drinking from them and going to them. And I never thought we'd experience a decade as tumultuous as the 60s. The tumult over the last years has been amazing. And the Constitution, the questions of constitutional issues and challenges to the presidency and all the debates we've seen come up, whatever side you're standing on. Following up on the last discussion, which was great, what do we see as ways things get addressed or changed? I'm just going to bring up 2 quick ones that we've seen questioned, or I would question. One of them is the duration of time between election and inauguration has been questioned. Is that something, I know you don't take a political perspective, but how does something like that get revised or revisited? The other one I would say that's so painful for me, and I'm sure for many, is our loss of the dear brilliant mind, Jeffrey Toobin, in the way that happened. I saw the most brilliant piece on Tablet magazine about the whole invasion of private space that we're all experiencing on these Zoom calls, and where and how the boundaries of your workspace so there's so many issues that touch on our fundamentals of our Constitution that we're being challenged with now. How do changes happen, and where do you think this goes over the years to come to make fundamental legal changes or constitutional changes?
Great questions. Love your passion, and that experience of the 60s is so important. Constitutional change comes from the ground up. Justice Ginsburg taught us that. She always said that the courts are important. They can codify changes that occur in the hearts and minds of the people. But she cited the example of the fight for LGBTQ equality, the fight for immigrants' rights, and the constant fight to make the Constitution more embracive, as she called it, as one that has to live in the hearts and minds of citizens. So, but in order to be moved, then people have to be educated and informed. And the Constitution Center has a very important but specific role in this. We are not political advocates for constitutional change of one perspective or another, but we are America's platform for conversation and debate. And we will host conversations about all the questions you just mentioned, including, was the 20th Amendment, which moved the date of the inauguration after, which had previously been taken place in March, did it strike the right balance? Why did it change the date, and could it be moved again? two very important questions involving invasions of digital privacy, which have been a special passion of mine before I joined the center. So basically just every day and every week on all of our platforms, the podcasts, the videos, the blogs, we're going to be convening folks to be talking about those questions. And by educating people, we believe that we'll be able to, in a meaningful way, inspire people to fight for what they believe in.
Jeffrey, we have two quick questions. How has the musical Hamilton increased interest in the Constitution, especially among a younger audience?
A lot, and we found that by sticking the word Hamilton on the front of the Constitution Center with a picture of Hamilton, I think we got some decent walk-in traffic. It was a small but really exciting exhibit that actually had his pistols lent by the Cooperstown Museum that has his original artifacts. And gosh, people sure love Hamilton. Now, you know, everyone wants to bottle the magic, and it may be unreplicable, but it's just a great reminder that, you know, given a lively, relevant format, people love history. It's as relevant as ever, and it is so exciting to be able to explore multimedia ways of inspiring people to learn about it.
And then finally, somebody had asked about volunteering, and Megan quickly put that you have a link about volunteering on your site. So she put that in our chat, but can you briefly talk about how we can get involved, how people can volunteer?
I will say that if you to volunteer to connect us to schools and help us distribute all of the amazing content that I'm talking about, just reach out to me by email, jrosen@constitutioncenter.org, because I would love your connections. And I hope that some of what I've said will have, you know, sparked some ideas and gotten you excited, and would love to talk more. But Vince, who answers all important, you know, practical questions, how can folks physically volunteer once we open up again, if they're interested?
Yeah, so I think somebody shared out the link to our volunteer page on our website. So if you check that out, also, you know, in addition to Jeff, my email is vstango@constitutioncenter.org. And, you know, we from volunteering in the museum to work with our visitors, to volunteering at town hall programs, and being able to, you know, witness and participate in some of the great speakers that we have come through. There's lots of great ways that that people can get involved. And, you know, with this group, to Jeff's point, you know, we'd love to tap into the just some of the thought leadership and how we can you know, advance our mission, increase our engagement and our impact in the community. So we'd love to, you know, as folks have ideas and ways that they think we could be doing a better job at this, that, or the other thing, would love to hear from you. So please reach out through the website or email Jeff or me directly. We'd appreciate your thoughts.